I am your host, Ubiji Kachiagu. I study economics and econometrics at the University of Bristol, and this is the first video um, for the Bristol Banking and Investment Society YouTube panel series. So we're basically trying to get students who are very bright and industry professionals on to just give us some of their expertise and experience and things that can really benefit students when applying for certain roles in finance. So today the agenda is going to be basically a spring week conversation. Um, and we're basically going to start off with an introduction of everyone else. So I'm going to start off with Peter. If you could just tell us the university you go to, degree you do, and what career path you're trying to get to in the future, and also the spring weeks which you achieved as well. And then we'll rotate that for everyone else.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Peter. I do economics and finance at the University of Southampton. Just finished my first year now. I did spring weeks at both Citi and Deutsche Bank in markets or FIC this division, whichever one you want to call it. And yeah, that's sort of the career I want to go into, sort of sales and trading.
No, that's brilliant. And if we can just get Loic next.
My name's Vivek. I study economics and finance at the University of Bristol. In terms of the springs, I did HSBC, Citi Securities, and then there's also one upcoming at BDO. And the industry that I'm trying to get into are real estate, private equity, as well as trading. Very different, but very interesting.
No, that's amazing. And if we can just get Sarah next.
Hi everyone, so I'm Sarah and I do economics at the University of Birmingham. Springs that I got included UBS, EY, Deloitte, Legal in General, and then I also received offers from Mazars and Sky. And in terms of, have I said everything? In terms of what I want to get into, I'm not too sure yet, but I'm thinking about consulting.
No, that's really interesting actually. Yeah. I like that mix of like UBS and also like accounting as well. Springs, that's very nice. If you can just get Christian next.
Hello everyone, my name is Christian. I'm doing BSc Finance at the University of Bristol, going into my second year. So yeah, I did spring weeks at HSBC and commercial banking, Schroders, which was asset management, and NatWest markets. And in terms of my future, I'd like to go into markets.
That's really nice. Um, and yeah, just so for some background information, me and Christian were actually both on the NatWest markets internship, so it was really nice meeting him. Definitely a lot learned there. And last but definitely not least, if we can just get Tia.
Hi everyone. So my name is Tia. I'm doing economics and finance at the University of Bristol. I've just finished my first year. I did a spring at Citi in the capital markets division, and hopefully I can do that for summer as well. But I'm open to exploring other things. Yeah.
No, that's really great. Really diverse range of springs. I think that's always like really interesting because you do get different perspectives from everyone. Um, so just for a little bit of background on myself, I did some springs, see NatWest Markets, and in the Markets division, and BDO Global in advisory and frontier economics and economic consultancy. Um, so definitely a lot of different disciplines with those. But we're just going to talk and go deeper into what we kind of learn on those springs. So the question I'd have for you guys is what did like a typical day in your springs look like? And for that, I'm just going to start with Sarah.
Yeah, so I think it definitely depended on the spring. So, for example, with UBS, it was kind of more of like a general overview. So, throughout the week, also it was longer than the rest of my spring, so it was 4 days. And so we had kind of like every department come in and talk to us about their division. And we also had a couple of like interactive simulations. So things like the Amplify Me trading things. I'm sure some of you guys have done those, that sort of stuff. And then for Deloitte, we had kind of a case study to work on over the 2 days. So that was nice. We were put in like different groups and we got to present at the end of the spring. And then Legal in General was also kind of like a group project as well. So they had us on like a marketing thing. So not hugely related to the actual asset management, but kind of a little bit of overlap. So yeah, a bit of a mix.
No, that's really good. And obviously, yeah, I think the presentation skills are something which you will like get from a lot of spring weeks, especially, but very key for just, you know, like what you want to do like in the future, because a lot of these jobs do, require good public speaking. Um, so yeah, no, that's really interesting. And with like regards to the culture, would any of you guys say like at these different firms you experienced almost not just like they had different cultures, but you almost felt like you were treated a bit differently. So maybe better at one firm compared to another. Um, and like, would you say your springs kind of changed your perspective on what you actually want to do in the future? Like if a certain industry is what you want to get into? And just for that, I'll just ask Christian and Loic, and then we can keep on going.
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. No, yeah, so I thought that out of the three firms that I was at, I thought HSBC, I mean, in terms of culture, every firm you go to will obviously portray that they've got a good culture. I feel it's quite difficult to find out their culture until you're working for them. But I thought that HSBC in commercial banking had, I don't want to say the worst culture, but out of the three, um, I do feel that way. So maybe Loic, I think Loic was in a different division to me. So maybe he might have experienced something else. So it'd be interesting to hear what he can say about that.
Yeah, funny enough for me, I think it's actually the opposite. So, for context, HSBC was corporate and institutional banking, which they renamed as just investment banking and markets. And I think HSBC had the best culture of the firms that Spring and turned out. I mean, they are kind of known for their culture. People always talk about HSBC and culture. So, yeah, in terms of at the Spring, they definitely had more of an inclusive culture. But like Kristen said, they do obviously do their job to portray that it is like that. And you truly don't know until you get there. And then also to answer the second part of the question, I think Mass Springs also helped me understand what I don't want to do. So for me, when I did HSBC and TD Securities, I understood that I think investment banking is not the career path for me at all. Number one, by what you're doing in the role. And then also a big part of what made my decisions is the people that you meet. And I just think I align more with people within markets versus the people that are in investment banking.
No, that's really interesting actually. And we are going to go on to Peter and Tia in a minute about their experiences. But just to touch on that with investment banking, because obviously a lot of students will say, I want to do investment banking without kind of knowing what it is and what they're getting themselves into. So for you, what was it about like investment banking which kind of like solidified in your head you may not want to do that and you may want to pivot to something else, such as maybe markets, for example? Like what kind of went through your head when making that decision, and like what kind of happened in your spring?
So I think for me, it was, it's going to sound weird, but I just feel like the people in markets are more normal than people in investment banking. It's weird to say, but it's kind of the realization that I had. I remember at TD Securities, we had a talk from an investment banker who'd been there for 9-ish, 10 years. And he was like your stereotypical investment banker, all the things that you see in the movies and all that. He was a definition of that. And I was like, do I want to work in an industry like that with people like that? not really. And then also hearing from people on the market, sales and trading side, bit more normal in my words. So for me, it was really that, as well as also the work that you're actually doing. A lot of people that say they want to go into investment banking don't know what you're actually doing in investment banking. But through HSBC and Citi Securities, they had lots of panel events to actually tell us what they were doing throughout the day. We also got a chance to learn and ask questions to them directly through networking events. And for me, just learning about what they do on a day-to-day basis and also the hours that they're doing, to me, it just doesn't sound very appealing. And then when I spoke to people on the markets, in specifically trading, what the work that they do on a day-to-day basis seemed a lot more stimulating and aligned more with my career goals.
No, that is really insightful. And I think a lot of people who are going towards markets, especially like I want to say with like our kind of generation, like younger people are moving more towards markets for that kind of fast-paced nature. Also with better hours as well. So definitely things to take into consideration. But if we can just get Peter and Tia's kind of insights on like their spring weeks, what they learned and did it like solidify that they want to do a certain path.
Well, I can go first. What was the culture like? I mean, for City, it was I enjoyed it quite a lot. Uh, Much more than Deutsche Bank. Yeah, I can say that. But, it was very welcoming. I think it definitely solidified that that was sort of the career I wanted to go into. We had 2 days in the desk with both either a sales analyst and a trading analyst. And I think I agree with what like Loic said. It's that sort of simulating tasks that you do on a day-to-day basis that made me sort of realize that that was sort of the path that I would take. And also speaking to, we talked to investment bankers or people in other divisions doing investment banking. I could sort of tell that that wasn't sort of the career path that I would enjoy. So yeah.
And if you can just get Tia's kind of insights as well, and if there are any like surprising or unexpected parts at the firms which you guys interned at.
So yeah, at City it was 4 days, and for 2 of those days we got to be on the floors watching everything go down. I think we were on there for 4 hours each, and it was during the week of the Trump tariffs. So that was really interesting in capital markets because it's like you're getting best of both worlds. You're kind of seeing investment banking and like markets all in play together. And honestly, I really appreciated how honest they were with us. People in the investment banking department, they were like, okay, like we haven't been getting any sleep. But the capital markets, even within capital markets, there's like debt, there's equity, and it's very different. And I really appreciated how when you're on the floors, you really get to watch that. And people are so like, you can go up to them, you can ask them questions. People were very open. And I really, really liked that about the spring week. And we got to speak to so many people, hear from loads of different people. It wasn't kind of like, oh, you're just sitting there listening to people ramble on, because I do think at some spring weeks they do that. You don't really get to speak to specific people, have many networking opportunities. So we got given mentors who were happy to like help us reach out to people. And I think I really like the culture. They were really supportive of even if you wanted to have a look and explore at different things.
Yeah, and that like um kind of like almost flexibility which like some of these firms will give you when they like really want you to explore things. Because I feel like some of them do understand we are young, so we are still going to explore like different paths and not kind of just like limiting you to one thing. But that is like really interesting. So obviously a lot of markets like springs there. Um, did any like desk kind of I want to say stand out to you guys a lot on the trading floor? Like, was there a desk which you saw which you were like, this is something I'd really like to do. Like, I really enjoy this product, or were you kind of just still considering like all of them? Like, were there any favorites for you guys?
I mean, I can start that off. So I think I started off on one of the days with one of the sales analysts on high yield credit. That's very confusing to understand. So it was hard to sort of realize whether that was something I wanted to go into. But I think one of my favorites was when I was with one of the traders on the metals desk. That's I think commodities as a whole is something that interests me. It's more sort of what's the word? That macroeconomics is something I enjoy, and think you see that a lot with your commodities. So that was sort of a product that I sort of enjoyed. But even at Citi, they went through all the products in depth. So you sort of gain sort of a little understanding of how each product works, how they were traded, because all the products actually work very differently as when you come to see it on the desk. So yeah, that's my answer.
That's really that's really interesting. I think like even like with commodities, in the past, like correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't as profitable as the other trading desks. So like I'm pretty sure the rates desks, if we're just talking sales and trading, were known to get like not the most, but quite um high amounts. But recently, commodities desks have actually been like earning very, very high figures. So it's actually becoming more appealing to people who are looking to go into sales and trading. So that's really nice. But if Tia, Loic, and Christian have anything that they want to say with regards to the desks, if there's anything which stood out to you guys.
Yeah, adding on to what Peter said, in the City Spring Week, I think it was the third day, they separated us into our different, like what we applied to. And within that, we got talks into like the specific desks and like the different divisions within capital markets, let's say. So we got talks on what investment banking was. We got debt capital markets, equity. We got a whole mix of like information. And so I think what interested me was debt capital markets. So I was on that desk for a day and I went up to my mentor and I was like, can I have a look at equity markets? And I was like, I don't think this is for me. It was too close to investment banking. But yeah, I think debt was really interesting.
No, that's really nice. If we can if Loic just has anything he'd want to touch on with regards to the desks. And also like the sales side as well, guys, not just like the trading, because I feel like sales is something which stands out to a lot of people too. But yeah.
So on HSBC, unfortunately, City, they got the advantage, they got to go onto desks. For HSBC, I think the only thing we did was the tour of the actual trading floor, which was kind of exciting to see all the people, on their desks. So we didn't get to do a tour, like actually learn more about the desk, unfortunately. And it was also the fact that we didn't actually get to speak to any traders, unfortunately. So I think when we had networking events, the bulk of people would always be salespeople because they don't have to be on their desks. And then the traders, because at the time Black Tia said it was Trump, the traders were not coming up to speak to us. They were too busy dealing with Trump and all his stuff. So yeah. But on that note, though, as I got to speak to a lot of the salespeople, it did make me realize sales might not be for me either on the market side. Still open to it because I don't fully understand it, and different desks, for example, might interest me a bit more. But unfortunately, we didn't get to delve deep into what is specific desks are like FX commodities and all that kind of stuff. But we did get to speak to a lot of salespeople, and I know people on the spring who, after speaking to the salespeople, decided, yeah, sales is definitely a role for me because they like the client interaction and also learning and being an expert within a specific division. And some people really enjoy that. But for me, I think the trading aspect just seems more appealing.
No, that's great. And if you just wanna, I'd just like to quickly bring Sarah back into this as well. I know you did UBS. So obviously that's really impressive, bulge bracket bank. Um, and just to make sure, it was like global banking.
It wasn't actually like tailored to a specific division. It was kind of an overview for the whole bank.
Oh, so you kind of got like a wider view of like everything.
Yeah, so they brought in people from like global markets, wealth management, asset management. It was a big range.
And would you say there was like anything kind of like stood out to you, like something which kind of sparked your interest? So
Um, I think going into that, I didn't really have a lot of like knowledge about the different divisions, so it was really helpful to talk to everyone. And I think coming out of it, the division that interested me the most was probably wealth management. Um, I heard about like the hours in the other divisions, and I was like, this isn't for me. Like the traders, obviously, they start really early and really late. Obviously, investment banking is crazy hours, but wealth management just really sounded interesting to me. You get to work with like a lot of different clients and stuff. So yeah.
no, that's amazing. And yeah, I think wealth management is something which is sometimes a bit overlooked by students. I think, it is very important for everyone who's applying to kind of understand, like, everyone does want the front office roles. So I feel like sometimes, obviously, you still aim high all the time, but you may not always get that role. So just consider everything, I feel like. But just to end this section off quickly, with Christian, obviously, I know you've done a lot of springs yourself, but especially like with markets, I know at NatWest, what kind of like desk did you like? Because I think the way they did it to us, it was kind of, I want to say, well, it was very like formal actually. They had really nice talks with us, and we were able to talk to some of the traders. So did any of like their the products they traded, did any of that like stick out to you in particular? Whether that's rates or Forex.
I mean, similarly to Peter, I've got an interest in commodities because of that whole macro aspect. I think at the NatWest Spring, having the opportunity to speak to all of those traders is always good. Unfortunately, similar to Loic, we didn't actually get to sit on each desk. So I think it'll be very difficult to say, as of now, which desk I'd want to go into. Because I say commodities, I might go in the future into commodities and absolutely hate it. Um, but yeah, I think we were promised a trading floor tour as well. It didn't actually happen, unfortunately, but I think networking with the traders is always good. Learning from their experiences, absolutely amazing. But I personally think that the best way to learn is to be put in that position, which is extremely difficult to get into.
Yeah, and just to like touch on that as well. Yeah, it is like extremely difficult to get into, whether that's investment banking, or sales and trading. Um, but like, yeah, one thing I noticed, like, I'm not sure if every firm does this. I'm sure not every firm does, but like some firms like NatWest have this thing where when you do your internship, so obviously you'll do a rotation, but they'll actually like they are very flexible. So if you don't like one thing in sales and trading, they'll literally like they can move you to like credit sales to trading, for example, if that's what you feel like you're best at, and they'll give you that opportunity. So I feel like really recognizing when a firm actually wants you to progress sometimes, and not necessarily just being a number, if you would say. But just to like go deeper into it and the actual like application process. So like with the strategies, how, well, what are the factors which you guys think made you like succeed with your Spring Week applications, first of all? So how did you guys structure your CVs? And also, how early were you guys applying? Like, were you guys applying to these, say, the same day or, the same week they would be uploaded? And if you could just start off with Peter for that.
Sorry, do you mind just repeating the question?
Oh yeah, no worries. So like with Spring Week application strategies, how early were you guys applying and what kind of factors do you think made your applications successful with the whole process?
Um, yeah, quite a broad question. Um, well, to start off with, I think using one of the things that helped me the most was Bristol Tracker. Pretty sure most people here would have used that. Literally the minute a firm would sort of be checking it every day, the minute I see a firm pop up, I'd sort of try and get my CV in as soon as possible, especially because some of them close after a certain amount have applied. What was the other question?
What do you kind of like feel like made your application successful? So, like, was there any certain CV formats you were using? Any
Yeah.
keywords you were including as well, which kind of like stood out to firms with screening?
I think, well, for me, I use the WSO format. I think you can find that online. It's to sort of structure my CV correctly. So having my education, my experiences, sort of leadership positions, and also other useful info in there. What I think helped the most was probably tailoring your CV to each firm. Uh, I think just firing out your CV at each company isn't going to be helpful. You need to sort of look at the description and tailor it to each specific firm to what the values, the sort of responsibilities, and all that they're looking for. I think that's what definitely helped me application process.
No, that's great. And yeah, like definitely tailoring it to certain firms. With applications, quality over quantity is
Yeah,
always you should be aiming for. Like that doesn't mean like don't apply to like a decent amount because you still want to maximize your chances, but just don't like, you don't really want to be lazy with the copy and paste. I mean, these firms have got like AI trackers to track all of this stuff, so they do know if you're actually being personal or if you're being lazy, and they will kind of just um, you know, filter you out from that. Um, but just to touch on that, with I think something which a lot of people like kind of ignore are the online assessments, which you actually have to do for these springs. So like if you don't get like a stupidly high score on these, you actually won't even get a higher view interview most of the time. So like with these online assessments, were you guys using any like resources, if that's like job test prep, or did you guys kind of go into like each of your applications just kind of just doing it for the first time?
Yeah, so I chose the strategy of going into it blindly in terms of I know job test prep is available, but I just preferred to not pay for that because it is quite expensive. So I found that as I did more assessments, online assessments, even video interviews, I learned that basically they're all kind of the same thing. So I forget their names, but every company will kind of use a different one, but the exams are looking for the same things. And then pattern recognition, and the more you do of these online assessments, the better you get, which is why I feel like the spring weeks that I did get were closer towards the end of the application season. So I think if you want to get an upper hand, getting a group of friends, getting job test prep, I think is the best one. Um, and doing as much practice as you can will definitely be a good way of succeeding.
Yeah, no, that obviously that like account sharing thing is definitely something which students could look into because yeah, the prices are a bit outrageous. But it's definitely, I'm sure it's a very beneficial thing to use. Like Christian, I personally didn't use job test prep for mine. I knew about it, but I thought it was a scam, so I decided not to get it. But from what I've heard, like, and some of my friends who have used it, they did actually get some springs, and they said it helped them out a lot. So I would definitely say it's something to look into for sure. But obviously, as we know, the spring week process was kind of so it was that initial CV screening, then you get sent the online assessment, whether that's numerical, verbal, behavioral. And then after that, you'd usually get a higher view, and then that should be you getting the spring if you do well on that higher view. For certain springs, there would be a video interview after. But for your like interviews and your higher views, how did you guys kind of prepare for that? Had you done like any initial preparation for those kind of interviews beforehand? And are there any tips you would give to students who want to like do well on their higher views? Because I know it is graded a bit weirdly, with the eye tracking and everything. So if we can just get Loic, Tia, and Sarah's kind of thoughts on that, with Loic first.
Yeah, so for the higher views, I think for higher views, the number one tip would be to work together. As much as people think it's a competition, you know, the way I look at it is if someone gets a spring and you both have the higher view answers, it's just that their answer was just better than yours, and you need to have a better answer. So I'd say definitely work with people to get the higher view answers. I know for Evercore, for example, I know me and my friends, we shared the higher view answers so that we got to the next stage. So yeah, definitely that'll be number one tip for higher views is to try and get the answers beforehand. It just makes your life 20 million times easier if you know what the questions are going to be. And then secondly, if you do get the questions, or even if you don't get the questions, a lot of the high view questions are similar from company to company. They're testing the same behaviorals. I think you rarely get any technical questions. The most technical thing you'll get is talk about something in the markets, which you should be clued up on anyways. So definitely preparing common questions that you're going to get. Tell me about yourself, and then behaviorals and motivational kind of stuff. And then the third advice I'd be is try and practice your answers beforehand. So if you know you've got to do this high view before X amount of days, try and prepare the questions beforehand, try and speak them out loud so that you're comfortable with it, but not too much to where you're just sound like a robot and you're just scripting your answers. Try and be a bit natural and then just look directly into the camera. And then that way, once you're prepared, you'll be confident in giving your answers because you know what you're going to talk about. And then when it comes to the Harvey, you're not panicking when you see that there's 30 seconds to prepare for the question and you don't know what to say.
Yeah, no, that's some great advice. And like I said, like I think you with the technicals, I don't think they're as vital for higher views. I'm pretty sure I don't think I got asked a single technical question actually. Um except for Houlihan, Loki, but bar that, there were none. So definitely like focusing on behaviorals, fit and motivationals are really good. Like Loic said. But if we can just move on to Tia.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Christian when he said it was easier to get into those rounds towards the end of the application process because it's like you've done these high views, you've repeated your answers, and you don't change them too much every time. Like you know there's going to be a question on teamwork, so you have a brief, like you have it jotted down what you're going to speak about. So before every like high view or video interview I made a Google Doc and it was just like the company's core values. So you know what to look out for, you know what to speak about, as obvious as it may sound. I also had a recent piece of news in case just some bullet points in case I missed anything. Um, and yeah, just general questions. I think the more you do them, the more used to you get used to like speaking about them and like saying them out loud. And you know what to include, you know how to make it short but not sound robotic at the same time. And I do really think in high views, looking at the camera is really important because they really can tell when you're reading off like ChatGPT, you're reading off the script. Even if it's your own script and it's not written by AI, I think it's very, very obvious. Just sounding more natural. I think that's the best thing because my video interview at Citi, I think I treated it more like a conversation than an interview. And that's why it was so much better. And I was honest, like when he asked me why do you want to do capital markets, I was like, I don't know much about it. I had a brief introduction when I did this work experience at Morgan Stanley. I was like, I really want to do this spring to learn more about capital markets. I'll be honest, I don't really know much. And I think he really appreciated that honesty. Sometimes it works out. I think other times people might not want to hear that. Like my Morgan Stanley interview, he was very direct, very straight to the point. He expected me to know everything. And so honestly, it just the more interviews you do, I guess, it's easier as you go along the application process.
Yeah, so I think that is that. Yeah, that's just an example of, practice kind of does make perfect with that stuff. And with that high view stuff, definitely like smiling as well. I think they care like a lot because they obviously want to like they can't really gauge your personality too well from a video like call. So the least you can kind of do is just smile to let them know that you're friendly, you're engaged. Um, but yeah, and if we can just get Sarah.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with what everyone said so far. I think practice is so important. And in my experience, I applied for degree apprenticeships in year 13 as well. And I feel like that's a big reason as to why I got so many spring offers, because I kind of learned like what companies were looking for, and I learned how to answer interview questions beforehand. Um, what I would say is, in terms of the application process, a lot of the times in the beginning they'll ask you some like initial questions, so you have to reply with like a paragraph about something that you've done or something. So what I did was I had three kind of set examples of experiences that I've had, and I kind of used those in the initial steps and then also in the higher view. And I think as long as you make them kind of adaptable, you can genuinely tailor it to any question that they ask you, because like people have said before, like towards the end of the process, you'll just be like, okay, I've seen this question before, or like this is the exact same as something else that I've done. So as long as you've got those three key examples, I feel like you can tailor them to anything. And then also something else I would say to help you stand out in terms of like the company values and stuff. Maybe on LinkedIn, just have a look at some people who are already working at that company, people who have worked there before, connect with them, and maybe drop them a message, ask what their culture is like at that company. And these bits, like you can drop into your high views or your video interviews or in-person interviews. And I feel like they're really good gems because they'll show the recruiters that you've done your research, like you've thoroughly done your research. You haven't just looked at the company website, you've also gone that extra step.
And that's a great point. And yeah, like especially when it comes to, I think, cover letters, like if you can actually say, I've spoken to X, Y, maybe an associate at your firm, they clearly know you're engaged. Like nobody else would just be doing that. So like yeah, just trying your hardest not to be generic. I know networking can be like very daunting for a lot of people, because you are basically messaging random people. But at the same time, you have to remember these people were in your shoes as well. So one of them will eventually help you out. And, you may even ask yourself like why they want to help you out. You're just trying to get they're trying to get a job out of me. And like, they do know that, but they do want to help you out as well because they were there before. So especially like with alumni, networking with them because they'll like you literally both went to the same university, so they'll want to see people from their university progress and flourish as well. Um, and just to kind of finish off this section, with like rejections, it's obviously a big part of the spring week process. So how were you guys kind of able to deal with your like rejections? Like, was it at first, was it like harder, and then as it went along, did it get a bit easier to deal with them?
I think I can start this off. With rejections, I think you're definitely going to see that quite a few times as you're applying because you're quite a lot of spring weeks over the whole like application process. But it's just to like take that rejection, take the information that they're giving you or where you need to improve, and using that in your next application is definitely the advice I'd give. I definitely reach out to the HR and ask where did I go wrong, what do I need to improve, and then take that information and use it on your next application. I think, as you said before, that you will improve as you go along with the applications. You'll see the same type sort of questions, why the firm, why this role, it will keep coming up, and each time you will improve. So it's just part of the process.
Yeah, no, that's great, and it's very like relatable, like you will kind of get better as you go along. I think Christian had something which he was gonna say.
Yeah, I think I'm just not taking it too much to heart, learning from it. So I got to final round BNP Paribas, and in the interview, I got the most insane question. I think it was so BNP Paribas are leaders in sustainability. What are the pros and cons of that for the future, for the present, and for the past of the company? And on the spot, that is, I feel even if you've done research into the company. Yeah, so that kind of caught me off guard. Obviously, didn't make it. Um, but learning from that, learning to taking that piece, and then obviously now I'm gonna actually like, especially for summers, dig really deep into the companies.
Yeah, no, yeah, like yeah, with those kind of questions, I mean, you never really know what to expect from a firm. So you kind of have to just go into it like I think it's a key reason why you shouldn't really memorize answers because the problem with memorizing answers is you like your brain's so fixated to what you've memorized that when they ask you something else, you can't really like adapt it too well because you've got that fixed answer. However, if you just like have general points of things you've done, you can always kind of twist that. But obviously, like with those kind of questions, you can't really always prepare for those. So there will always be some questions like that. Um, and if anyone has anything else to say about rejections before we go on to the next part.
I think what I would say is that a lot of candidates who start applying for Springs, they'll see like the first few rejections come in, and then they'll kind of get put off of the application process, and they'll stop applying or not apply for as many. So I think it's so important to differentiate yourself from that. When you get rejection, don't think, okay, that's it, I'm not going to apply anymore, I don't have a chance. Like, just by continuing to apply, you're putting yourself ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And also, yeah, that kind of like imposter syndrome sometimes, like just don't let that get to you, especially if you don't think your uni's like good enough, like just still apply because you will be surprised. Like at these spring weeks, you'll see people from like a wide range of firms. Um, I know Warwick's a big one. But you know, you all see students from, so many Warwick, Bristol, um, you know, Oxbridge, Leicester, like there are people from everywhere. So definitely don't like be disheartened, especially before the application process. Because if you do that, you are just projecting yourself. Like you're not even giving the firm an opportunity to do that. So definitely don't disqualify yourself before starting. But just to move on really quickly, like were there any like resources or support schemes you guys used? So things such as, Bright Network, SEO London, and if so, did any of these like help you guys out?
I can cover this. So for me, the biggest one would be number one, your biggest support is always your peers. You know, like I mentioned, how I've used preparing. I know my friend had an interview with Barclays, and the night before we did a whole mock interview. And then the next day, some of the questions we did in the mock interview came up in his interview. So definitely your peers. And then in terms of networks, SEO London for sure. If you're able to get access to that, they've got a ton of resources. You learn more about the industries. You've also got access to like exclusive spring weeks that you can't access without SEO London, and then also the ones that they put on themselves. So, for example, the real estate spring week that I was a part of, I was able to learn more about real estate private equity, which ultimately shaped where I wanted to go within my career. So, definitely SEO London is a really big one if you can get involved in that.
Yeah, no, I have heard a lot of things about SEO London, a lot of good things actually. I think there was a real estate kind of program this year, so that seems like it was really beneficial. So yeah, obviously mock interview prep as well. Like just make sure you're doing mock interviews with your peers. That's really the one of the best things you can do because something can sound so good in your head, but then when you actually present it to someone, it's completely different. So getting as much practice as you can for that, just so it comes as second nature to you. Um, and yeah, if anyone has anything else to touch on that before we go to the next one.
Um, I want to say I think it's also really useful going to university like society events. I think a lot of people on the committee, they've done springs or they've applied to summers, they've done the whole process. So I think they've just done it as well. So it's quite new and it's quite recent and they know what's going on. I think they can help you out quite a lot. I know I've reached out to like second years so much and they've helped me immensely. Um, and also just like being able to get insight into the application process if you know nothing about Springs. It's really, really useful. Just I think reaching out, it nothing can go wrong because what's the worst that could happen? Like they say no, they don't have time for you. That's all right.
Yeah, no, that is so true. And yeah, that is like the worst thing they kind of can say. Like, you know, they aren't gonna taunt you for it, etc. They will just say no. So definitely don't like be discouraged. Um, yeah, that's an amazing point. And just with like the next section is kind of like the biggest lessons and mistakes. So, obviously regarding the whole spring week process, I'll just start off with myself. So I think that my biggest mistake with this whole process was applying too late. So at the start of uni in September, early August, late August, everyone's kind of on it, and I wasn't on the applications like at all. So I basically missed out on all the bulge brackets, all the elite boutiques, and quite a few of the middle market firms. And part of it is because I didn't really know too much about springs. I didn't really know the importance of them either. And unfortunately, that's something that I learned, I want to say, after Christmas time, around January/February. So that's obviously pretty late because springs usually meant to start in, spring, so March and April. So obviously I'm kind of there just like rushing, applying for all these springs. Thankfully I was able to land a couple. But the thing is, like, obviously I don't want to put that down to luck, but there is a bit of luck involved in these springs, and not everyone can always be lucky. So you really do want to maximize your chances by applying early. That's got to be like the biggest thing that I could say. Um, I know that being burnt out can definitely be a thing, especially after you've just done your like A levels, etc. But just try to stay driven and motivated because it really is a great chance for you to like excel your career and get that return offer possibly for a summer and then a graduate role. But just definitely stay motivated. And yeah, easier said than done. But that's just the advice I would kind of give to my first year self. Um, and yeah, if anyone else would have any lessons or mistakes, and possibly any like myths as well about spring weeks, um, any possible misconceptions you think some people might have. So if we could just start with Sarah and then go to Peter.
I think um, that something that I wished I had known before applying was how time consuming it is. Especially if you're trying to apply to everything that opens on Tracker. It honestly is like a full-time job alongside uni and like having a social life. It takes a lot of time, and that's without even doing like extra application stuff. Like I didn't use SEO London or like job test prep or anything. I went into a lot of stuff blind, and even still, I felt like it took so much of my time. But that's also something that I would say to people who are going to be applying to Springs as well. Don't think that you can't go into it like that and not succeed, even if you don't go to the best uni, or even if you're not using job test prep, or you don't feel like you deserve a Spring or anything. Definitely about that imposter syndrome. Like anything is possible.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, like I said, touching on that imposter syndrome again, just like make sure you're applying. Um, because you just don't want to feel like regret, basically. That's like the main kind of takeaway. But yeah, if anyone else has anything, like any mistakes, anything they wish they knew before applying as well, possibly.
Um, I think with me, it was keeping track of ones I'd actually applied to. At the start, I was just sort of anything I'd see, I just applied to, and then I'd be missing like high view dates, online assessments, and stuff like that. So I think what I did after a while was have Notion and sort of write down each of the firms I was applying to and what stage I was at in the deadlines. That was a great way to sort of keep up with my applications. And it's sort of a myth, I think, is it's only sort of maybe targets and semi targets you see at spring weeks. I think if you sort of put your mind that you can sort of get a spring week, you should be fine. So yeah.
And yep, I see Christian has his hand up, so
Um, no, yeah, so I think just to start with a myth, I think people are kind of worried about not getting a spring in their first year. Whilst it does help, I feel like So I was equity analyst for the Bristol Investment Fund. My portfolio manager uh basically didn't know what a spring was in her first year. She managed to get a summer and then converted that summer into a grad role without a spring. So I feel like whilst there is quite a large emphasis, I know we're here talking about springs, how important they are. I don't feel like you should feel sad or let down if you don't get one. And in terms of advice, I think a big one is copying and pasting the job description because for a lot of the interviews, the answers are in the job description, especially for why the company or why this role. They once the job application closes, so the job description disappears. So I think just having a copy of the job description would be some good advice that I would give to my first year self.
Yeah, no, that's great. And if we can just finish off with Tia and Loic, with the lessons and mistakes.
Um, I think, yeah, they've all been pretty much covered. I think how much time it takes, it's quite time consuming. That was probably the most surprising thing to me as well. It's because there is so much going on. There's these interviews, there's these high views, there's online assessments all going on at the same time. And I think it's just quite difficult keeping on top of everything. Like I always had the tracker open. There was always a tab open on my laptop with the tracker, but you still miss things sometimes because you get caught up with uni, you get caught up with lots of different things. But yeah, trying to apply early was pretty difficult because especially if you're, working, you have uni, you're trying to be social, and uni's just starting. So as a first year, it's September, it's October, like these springs open up really early sometimes. And I think it's just the time management that it came down to, honestly.
That balance with like uni and obviously applications is, yeah, it's definitely like a big one. It can take a bit of a toll on you, especially if you're applying to a lot. So I think you guys provided really good advice with like apply to like firms you actually feel like you want to work at, as opposed to just everything. Um, but yeah, if we can just finish off with Loic.
So two things would be one, actually do apply to everything. Because I think the mistake that I made was I didn't apply to anything in trading because I was told, oh, you need to do maths and STEM and quant stuff, which is true to an extent. But some of the springs you didn't need to do any sort of quantitative degree. So I do regret not applying to those trading roles. And then the second thing, like everyone said, applying early and not fixating on small stuff. So I remember being PP, I spent 2 weeks on the written answers, which I'm 99% sure they don't even read. So there's no point spending all that time on the written answers. If your CV isn't like the best, I don't think the written answers you could say anything that's going to be like, yeah, this the written answers is amazing. Just get it out of the way and focus on your CV being as good as it can, because those small things, do they play that much of a role? It's like the cover letter myth as well, does it actually that play that much? Unless you've spoken to someone directly at the firm, there's not too much that you could say that could possibly boost your application. So yeah, definitely one of the biggest mistakes was just spending too much time on stuff that didn't matter. Because after a few days, now that the track has gotten a lot more popular, there's thousands of applications, and you won't even get your application seen if you're spending so much time on small things like that.
Yeah, no, yeah, and yeah, just to like kind of touch on that. Yeah, being like really, I feel like specific with what you're um kind of doing. I mean, I find it interesting because obviously applying for everything, like you want to keep your options open, but also like you want to be smart with it as well. So yeah, it's kind of like going back to like applying for like apply for, well, you can say apply for everything, but just be a bit smart with your applications. Like if you know there's something which really doesn't interest you, then maybe you can skip something if you think applying to that may get in the way of like your work, so your uni work or etc. But if there are different parts which you haven't heard about, then definitely, do be applying to those because you may just find out that it is a thing you want to do later on. But just to like go on to the next part, so obviously after spring weeks, so um obviously we all know about assessment centers. Um so that this is like basically the way that people will get, fast tracked to summer programs. Um so has anyone here like had any like assessment center experience? And have they got any advice that they can offer for that? And just to touch, I haven't like had like my first assessment center yet, so obviously I can't really offer a great insight into it. But if anyone did, then that'd be great.
I don't mind talking about this. So I know a few of the springs, you don't do your assessment center until later. So I'm sure Citi, I know someone there, they're doing it when like later on. But for HSBC, for example, you got the chance to do the job simulation again and then the assessment center. And typically the assessment center is usually interviews with different people at the firm, depending on your division. So for trading, it was three interviews with people senior within the trading, or actually no, sales and trading team. And then in terms of preparation, I think the best advice would be to one, practice with people, because again, mock interviews is going to help. You're going through the process and two, reaching out to people like Tia said, people who have done it the year before, the companies are probably going to ask similar questions that they're going to be able to help you on understanding what you are going to actually go through the assessment center. So definitely reaching out to people to learn more about the types of questions that they ask and more about the process and what you'll be doing in the actual interview. But yeah, that would be the main advice.
And like, was that kind of like, would you ask people like who had already done it before, how it was like for them, and then get their kind of like information on it and then use it accordingly?
Yeah. So like the year before, there was someone who went to Warwick and he converted the trading spring internship. So asking him what he'd gone through in the process, to kind of understand about the questions, because typically, you haven't done those rounds of interviews for your spring. I don't think there's any springs or maybe a few where they do a couple of rounds of interviews in comparison to when you're converting a spring where you have to do two, three interviews, which all last 40 minutes long, where you're just being blasted questions. So it's reaching out to try and understand more about what they've actually gone through and the types of questions they ask so that when you're preparing, you kind of prepare to know what types of questions. So for example, trading, they'll ask you market sizing questions, and then mathematical questions. And if you don't ask people before, you might not know what types of questions to expect. And then if you go to your interview and they ask you how many telephone boxes are in London, and you're hearing that for the first time, you're going to think, what's going on? So definitely reaching out to people is key.
For sure. I do agree. And like with the interviews as well, especially with assessment centers, I feel like you'll sometimes get asked a question, so like almost a brain teaser. So like the thing with this is they don't actually expect you to know the exact answer. It's more so like your thought process, like how you actually got to the answer. If that's very clear and defined and structured, then the interviewer will usually like give you the pass for that because they really don't expect you to know. So like for example, how many tennis balls could fit in like Wembley Stadium? I remember I saw somebody break this down and he was like, well, if you can fit maybe, what's it, 10 to 15 in like one leg, and then obviously you can like kind of from that you can work out how many tennis balls fit into one person, then times that by how many seats are in Wembley Stadium, then you can like kind of get to an answer. And like I said, even if your answer is wrong, they will appreciate the effort. With those questions, the worst thing you could probably do is like not answer it because not answering it as you kind of telling the interview, well, because they don't expect you to know it. They just want you to kind of give them some sort of like insight into how you may possibly get to that answer. Like they really don't want the answer. Obviously getting the answer is a plus, but they really don't like really care if you get it. And you obviously can't prepare for these questions, but it's more just so how it's like to test how analytical you are and how your brain kind of works with problem solving. Um, but no, that's great. And like with tips for staying in touch with some of these firms, which you guys obviously interned at with your spring internships, did you guys or do you still stay in touch with their HR or any possible like any of the presenters, the people who were presenting to you at your spring weeks?
So with City, you were sort of given a buddy. So I try and sort of keep in contact with my buddy now, sort of gain maybe insights on sort of technicals that might be useful for my AC later on. And also keeping in touch with maybe people in your division on your spring internship. I know we still got a group chat for our spring internship for our division. Sometimes we communicate in there different uh, technical questions or how to answer different things. So that's definitely useful.
Yeah, and that mentorship part is really important. I feel like when you have somebody you can kind of talk to. So it was like a similar thing like with Gleacher's Shacklock. Um, my mentor was an associate. So just kind of keeping that very personal human bond with them. Also like never making it sound too robotic. Like almost see them as a friend over anything because they are really just trying to help you out and not only elevate your career but also elevate you as a person. Um, but no, that's really great. And if anyone else had anything like they'd want to touch on when it comes to like people who they're staying in touch with, um, and also like plans for summer internships. Are there any strategies which you guys are like trying to implement to be successful with these? Are you going to implement anything you used for your springs, which helped you get springs for these? Are there any things which you're going to change? So, are you possibly going to change your approach for summers? Um,
I guess in terms of staying in touch with like the cohorts that you've been a part of, I think that's important because I met, for example, I met a girl on my Deloitte's spring, and she told me about a summer that I was also applying for that year, but I had kind of written it off because I couldn't make the assessment centre date. So I was like, summer isn't my priority this year. I'll just focus on springs, whatever. But then I met her and she told me about the process and how it was quite simple, quite straightforward. She mentioned what it was like. And that there were more assessment centre dates coming up, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I should go for it then. So I did, and then I actually got into that summer as well. So we're in the same cohort now at PKF Littlejohn. So yeah, I would just say it's so important to network like that because you never know what opportunities could open up later on.
yeah, and especially like yeah, keeping um that kind of relationship with people who you're interning with as well, through the networking. Yeah, that's very, very important. Um, and yeah, just kind of like go on to like, um, just before we end it off, like with kind of summer preparation. Um, are there any things that you guys are doing like now, for example, which you feel like will help you out, um, with those summer applications for 2026? And if there's any advice you could give to people who are also applying for 2026, things you think they could possibly do?
Yeah, I think the process becomes more technical in terms of the question that you could be asked. So, in terms of trading, like Loic mentioned, the questions are going to be more on markets, brain teasers and stuff like that. If you're looking at IB, there's loads of resources available online. I know there's the 400 IB questions which is available online. If you're looking at consulting, there's case studies that you can look at. And yeah, I think just be prepared for technical questions.
And if anyone else has anything they'd like to add with regards to summers?
Yeah, I agree with the technicals. I got on call with my mentor actually yesterday from Citi, and she's an associate, and she's been one for 2 or 3 years, I believe, so she knows what she's doing. So I asked her about the interview process any technicals that might come up. And so she told me the assessment center in September would be motivational, technical, and there'd be a case study. So she kind of helped me prep and like tell me about what kind of questions might come up, things that I kind of have to know to prepare for it. I think it's really important to like be proactive when it comes to meeting, like setting up calls with your mentors and things, because I'm also on this GC Advisory Academy program. So what they do is they give you a mentor, but it's on you to be able to then um like email them and stay in contact with them, ask them questions that you think are useful. It's on you. So I think that's really important to then be like don't be afraid to ask what you think might be silly questions. I think they are very open to telling you, oh yeah, this these are things you have to know. This is what might help you. They are quite useful.
Yeah, that is really interesting actually, because I'm pretty sure Christian and Loic, are you guys doing summers as well? Like, kind of some experience, yeah. So how is that like kind of going for you guys, and how do you feel like you'll be able to incorporate that, especially into your CVs, but also like when just talking to these interviewers about how it went and how it can relate to these firms you're applying to?
So for me, I think it's mainly about the experiences that you get along the way. So the industry that I'm in now is not completely like related to real estate private equity, nor is it completely related to trading. But the experiences that I've got along the way will help me in my answers. For example, when they ask, tell me about a time you've done this and that, all the experiences that I've gained through the internship, I can now just tailor it to the specific industry and pick up specific examples of tasks that I've done to help me in my answers when I'm going for interviews for summer internships within the future. And it's also quite difficult to balance doing an internship and then prepping for 2026 summer internships because every time I get home from work, I'm too tired to do anything. So it is a bit of a struggle, but it's the choice you've made. So I say definitely if you can get a summer internship, the experiences you get along the way are usually really going to help you not only stand out in your CV when you do go to apply for 2026 because you have relevant experience, you've done an internship before, you understand the corporate environment, but also all the experiences that you learn along the way. So being able to work with people, work on individual tasks, all the experiences that you get over the weeks will really help you stand out in your answers when you go on to do interviews for 2026 summer internships.
And if we can just get Christian's kind of like some internship and how that could possibly help with summers.
No, yeah, I mean everything Loic said basically spot on. Really hard to balance the application process. Getting home, do I go gym? Do I prepare? No, but yeah, so mine is in cyber underwriting and insurance, which is not related to trading, but my team basically tells me that it is trading, but you're trading insurance. So it's also about how you're framing the summer internship. Another, I think a piece of advice I would like to mention is I like to add things to my CV the moment I get them. So I had this summer internship on my CV even before I started. So I think that's another good thing. And in terms of CV, because I feel like CV is quite important, the way you phrase things is quite important. So if I'm working on a deal with my team, I might not have that much involvement, but if I can phrase it correctly and I'm asking the right questions about to my buddy, to my manager, it's almost as if I was there. So kind of manipulating that to my advantage. So in future interviews, I'll be able to also talk about that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point as well. And just want to touch on something before I kind of pass it over to Peter on like his kind of expectations with 2026 as well. Because obviously, Deutsche Bank and Citi are two bulge brackets. That's a very good experience. And also like just being able to talk about that to your interviewer. I'm sure there are a lot of key points there. But I just want to talk about some springs. Like I'm pretty sure I've got a spring with Loic a bit later on. So that's with BDO in advisory. And I think there's a assessment center for that as well. Um, but kind of like with that, like like with your kind of, I want to say your springs, are you like, let's just say hypothetically you do the assessment centers and you get the return offers, for example. Would you like weigh all of those like equally, would you say? Or are there some which you would definitely put above others, like even now, for example?
So I mean, yeah, definitely there is a waiting. So for HSBC, fortunately we didn't convert, so no choice for that. But then for TD Securities and BDO, I think there is a waiting. So for me, it's actually not even those internships aren't the main thing I'm prioritizing. It's probably going to be real estate private equity, because it's the thing that I'm the most passionate about. But then if I was to get a trading role, I think the way would an ideal environment where I get two amazing offers. I think it just boils down to what in my heart I truly want to do this year. Because there's also, as much as, there's a lot of emphasis on, oh, you need to get an internship in second year. The second year isn't the final year. There's still third year. There's still people that do internships in their third year because they either decide that they do one in second year, they don't even know, and they don't even like it. That's a big, big opportunity and big reason. Because a lot of people, they say they want to do this and then they do the internship for 10 weeks and they're like, I absolutely hate this. You need to go on to the third year and apply again. So for me, yeah, there's definitely different weightings, but we'll see when we get there. I can't speak on it too much now because, I haven't got any offers yet, but it's more of a thing where we'll see when we get there what offers there are. And then I'd weigh it out with myself and understand what I truly want to do. And also accepting all your offers, make sure you accept, if you get an offer, accept it. And then, if you want to switch, then reject it after.
Yeah, definitely like yeah, accept your offers because like guys, you really need to accept them because it's very hard to get an internship. And also it gives you that safety net as well. But just to finish off with Peter, like how are you kind of feeling with the 2026 summer process? Um and how do you feel like your experience is going to help you out when applying?
So for me, unfortunately I wasn't able to convert my Deutsche Bank spring week, so that's out of the question. But I've still got my Citi AC later on. For me, it's sort of this summer, since I don't have a summer internship, it's more about gaining skills. For me, I'm trying to learn more sort of Python, VBA, SQL skills, keep building on that sort of programming skills that will sort of help me not only in the interview but in the actual role later on. And again, my technical knowledge, as we've already talked about, just the different type of questions that will sort of I'm expecting to come up. So yeah, another big advice I'd also say for people is it's not just about the sort of technical knowledge but about your EQ as well. They also want to know. They also want someone that they can actually work with, someone that they want to work with. So that's also a big advice to people and stuff. So build your EQ as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And also, like, yeah, like I feel like commercial awareness, especially like more so with markets than anything else, they really do prioritize that, and interviewers will value that a lot. So anyone looking to do markets, whether that's market spring weeks or summers, just make sure you know what's actually like going on in the markets. Um, and yeah, I think like with me and Christian, our AC is a bit later. I want to say it's full time, so late August, early September. But I'm sure it will definitely be a similar like style of questions to where everyone's like been asked already and what they'll be asked in the future. So definitely sharing insights on that, I feel like could help us all out a lot. But I would just like to end this off by saying thank you to everyone for joining.